in celebration of the new year, the most common question we've received on the show for the last few months is some semblance of this question. John's always talking about this strategic plan he does with his wife every year, this meeting they have or this retreat they have. What do they talk about? How do they do it? Like, what are the ins and outs of this thing? And then how do you keep it going throughout the year, right? So I want to break down for you what me and my wife have done, why we do it, where it's come from, and more importantly, like, here's the things we talk about, and here's the way we keep this thing going throughout the year. So it started about, 15 years ago. I was working at a university, maybe a little bit less than that. There was the dean of the College of Business. His name was Dr. Rick Lytle, a great guy. But he came to talk to my team, and one of the things he said that he did with his family was they did a strategic plan every year. And I was like, well, of course, you're the dean of a business college. That makes sense. Sounds lame, but cool. And then he said this. He said, why in the world would I spend all this time in preparation and money and gatherings and all this energy building a strategic plan for a business? Something that is going to go away someday. And not put that level of time and energy and intentionality into my family. And the light bulb went off. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm just expecting my family to happen. I'm expecting my marriage to happen. I'm expecting my money just to figure itself out. I'm just expecting to, have a Tahoe and 3 houses and a whatever and a partridge in a pear tree. I just expected this crap to happen. And I expect my marriage to be awesome and the sex to always be amazing and the kids to raise themselves. When he said that, I was like, yeah, we got to be intentional about this. And then I did nothing. I did nothing for a while. I had a couple of ideas. Maybe we went to a breakfast on New Year's, here and there. And then we got to a place, my wife and I, where we had to decide, are we going to stay married? We reached a point where we were sitting across a table, a grown-up table, and saying, we're going to be adults, or are we going to stay married? Because if we're going to stay married, we can't keep doing this. This has to change. This has to change. This has to change. And that started I remembered that conversation with Dr. Lytle. And so that started a very intentional strategic plan. So here's what it looks like. And the form, people get caught up in the form the same way they get caught up in daily morning routines. They get caught up in what's the exact supplement. That's less important. Sometimes over the last 5 to 7 years, my wife and I have, I think it's more about 5 to 6 years is when we've been doing this really religiously. Once we went out of town and just spent a weekend together. Once we did a progressivist. My favorite one so far was we got a babysitter. Maybe my parents were in town, but we did an entire day. We started somewhere for coffee. We then went to breakfast. We then went somewhere and went for a walk, and we went to lunch somewhere, and then we spent all afternoon in another coffee shop, and then we had a nice dinner to kind of wrap up the evening. And then this year, we had to do it on 3 separate days. Some years, it's been awesome. Just being honest, this year's it was not great. I wasn't feeling great. I was not super excited about the new year. I came with this picture in my head. She came with that picture in her head, and it was like, ugh. So we had to have a 4th meeting, right? But here's how you do it, whether you have to break it up 1-hour increments, or I'm going to do it a couple of Saturdays, or we're going to go on a retreat once a year, or twice a year. Here's the important thing. Carve out some time, very intentional time, half a day. I think you can't do it a minimum, and you got to have 4 hours to do this, probably more. That means somebody's got to get childcare. Somebody's got to ask their mom and dad to come up and visit. Or maybe you're on the holidays and you're staying at your in-laws' house. We did that one year where we went away and we left the kids while we were on vacation. We went away and did it. Set aside some intentional time. Decide on a budget for the day. We're gonna spend $500 today. We're gonna spend $100 today. We don't have any money at all, so we're gonna just do coffee and water, and then we're gonna eat at McDonald's to celebrate. I don't care what it is. Pick the time and the place, and then this is important. You got to do your homework separately. And if you're not willing to do separate homework, you're not willing to have this meeting, and you probably have bigger issues in your marriage. And homework does not mean you have to do it a whole year, okay? Here's what the homework is. Here's some questions, and this is from a list that my wife and I actually use ourselves. How do you feel about last year? What are some things from last year you're really proud of? What are some challenges you faced? And here's what you find. You're going to find that y'all didn't know the other person was facing this challenge. Or maybe you absolutely did know, but you're going to find some things out. What are you most looking forward to next year? Who are you becoming? What are 4 or 5 ways I could love you better? Each one of these could be answered in 5 minutes. Most of the time it goes on, it talks, and then it opens up this can of worms and whatever. Reflect on the past year. What do we need to grieve? This one was really important for us this year. We had some big dreams, and the dreams didn't die. They just changed. And I realized, I'm still holding on to this thing, but everything's different now. What do we need to grieve? What milestones do we need to celebrate? Stop and celebrate. How did we handle challenges as a team? Is there anything we'd like to change next year? And then we're going to get into the hard conversations. We're going to talk about sex and intimacy. We're going to talk about our health. We're going to talk about parenting. How are you feeling? Have you got a blood test? I've gained 30 pounds. You look like you don't feel good. I feel separate from you, whatever that happens to be. Parenting. How are our kids doing, and how are we both working together to support our kids? Money is a big one. Money's a big one. And I'm going to link to this in the show notes. A lot of this can be funneled through money. Every dollar is the best budgeting app on planet Earth, and it forces couples to sit at a table and decide what is important to us and how do we want to spend our money. I'm going to put a link to, I think it's free month or 3 months or something like that, of the premium version of it. But I'll put a link to it in the show notes. It's awesome. It's the one I use with my family, with my wife. Schedule and commitments. My wife and I go through a calendar. Then we talk about work. I don't have a book coming out this year, but I did last year. So last year, a lot of our conversation was, what's life going to be like when you're on touring the country? This year, it's going to be a little bit different, the conversations. But we put those things on the calendar, and we put big plans for trips or not trips or holidays or whatever that thing is. Then we get very granular and decide action items. Who's going to actually hit the button to pay this bill? Who is going to call for the sitter? We're going to have date night every 2 weeks. Who's going to call the sitter? Because one of you is just going to expect the other one to do it. Let's just sit down and go through all of those things. And then what my wife and I do every week as we get together, we used to do it on Sunday nights. This year, we're going to start doing it more on Saturday mornings. And I give my kids screen time once a week because I'm a Neanderthal, and so they'll sprint upstairs and play video game or watch cartoons or whatever. My wife and I will spend several hours working through the week, and then we go for a really, really long walk, or a long ruck. And when we make that a plan, we do that every Saturday. It just kind of becomes the way things are. Sometimes the Saturday conversations aren't pretty. They're more of us bickering and fighting, and I can't believe this, and I don't feel like this, and whatever. Sometimes they're so energetic and awesome. It's just the ebb and flow. It's a roller coaster, right? I'm not getting off, so it's just part of the ride. And then here's the important thing. Over the years, you'll tailor this to yourself. I'm actually thinking about coming up with a leather-bound journal for couples that you would take on your retreat at the beginning of the year, and then you would fill it in every week for your weekly meetings. If you're interested in that, shoot me a DM on Instagram or email the show, johndelony.com/ask, ASK. Let me know if you're into that, because it would be I want it to be something that a dude's not going to feel weird carrying around, but that would be good for everybody. And here's my dream. My dream is you would have 10 of these or 15 of these or 25 of these journals, and your kids will get to watch the arc of their parents, what they worked through, what they thought through, what their budget was 25 years ago versus what it is now, how you handled X or Y or Z or whatever. But I'd love to have a really nice, strong, leather-bound, like, here's our strategic plan. This is going to get us through the year. And here's the final thing. Know that life will change. Somebody will get cancer. Some kid's going to get sick. Some kid's going to have to leave school. Someone's going to have to fly home to Texas because something's happened to dad. Whatever the thing is, hold it loosely. Plan really well and then hold it loosely, because once the bullets start flying, then things kind of go out the window. That's the point of the plan. Point A of the plan. I'll just say what Patrick Lencioni says. The importance of the plan part of the strategic plan, it's a byproduct. It's a byproduct of actually getting together and talking and listening and going back and forth and getting on the same page. The plan is cool, but the plan's going to change. What's not going to change is that you and your partner get together and say, come what may, I'm going to be right here. and you can count on me, and I'm going to count on you. And we have some agreement about where we're headed. And if life throws us a curveball, we're going to sit down and talk about it, and then we're going to go from there. But that's what we do every year. We do have a summer that we get together for half a day just to kind of check in, see how things are going. How are you doing? Do you still like me? That kind of stuff. But the beginning of the year, that strategic planning season is really, really important. And what's now fun is looking back 5 years ago and saying, I want to have this much money. I want to have a house. I want our kids to be this healthy and safe. And to look and see, man, we've accomplished a lot of that stuff. It's pretty awesome to watch the journey. So use that for how you will. I'm going to put a link to this PDF that my wife and I use in the show notes here, and you can check it out.